Back in the Middle Ages, winter was the most difficult time to survive due to a lack of food and warmth. In towns and cities, people could get through the whole season with a cache of supplies, but that was not always the case in the countryside. Not to be discouraged by chilly nights in the middle of winter, people in medieval Europe found all sorts of interesting ways to pass the time. Medieval times were not just the time of plague and ignorance. We have things like eyeglasses, printing presses, and compasses to thank for medieval inventions. Winter was an even tougher challenge back when people lived in the Middle Ages because lacking central heating and modern fabrics, the climate and extreme cold took an awful toll. Although winter may be a time of delight for some of us in the modern era, it was a season of grief and misery for people during this period, in particular the less affluent. Death rates among the indigent spiked as an often dire consequence. In an admittedly predictable pattern, you were far more likely to contract and succumb to illnesses, including pneumonia and hypothermia. Despite that, people still found ways to layer their clothes. It was popular for outer clothing to be made from wool, with undergarments made from linen. They also wore cloaks, scarves, boots, and gloves. Peasants sometimes wore leather boots made from pig or cow skin. The great majority of the country's poor lived in wattle and daub homes, which were simple dwellings plastered with clay, straw, and animal manure. Other parts of the country had huts built with stones. A peasant hut typically had a wooden shutter window. Furthermore, there was a stove for cooking and heating and a thatched roof without a chimney, as that was considered expensive for a peasant. Consequently, since the inside temperature of their homes was the same as the outdoor temperature, and their form of heating was less efficient, they would often wear their outdoor clothes inside. Late September sees the winter season begin to take effect as the days begin to shorten. Michaelmas, previously celebrated in medieval England, marked the end of the farming season, and lasted until February 2nd, Candlemas. Winter traditionally ends at this point and the spring planting can start. In the Middle Ages, autumn was used to harvest and preserve grains, vegetables, and meat to last until spring. Because the winter was too cold to care for livestock, villagers slaughtered their livestock or hibernate the animals to survive the adverse weather condition. Salt, a valuable commodity during the time, was often used for preserving foods like meat, cheese, and butter. The work was traditionally done by the women of the household. Poor harvests could result in starvation or death during the winter months. The winter months were the time of pottage, which was made of boiled vegetables and grains with whatever was on hand, including fruits, as well as peas, beans, lentils, and herbs. Cheese, eggs, and salted pork made up some of the villagers' protein-rich diet. During winter, the rich consumed mutton, pigeons, butter, figs, cheese, grapes, and red wine to keep their lungs clear of phlegm. An ancient Greek theory which was used in the European Middle Ages believed the human body contained 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They believed illnesses were caused by an imbalance of these fluids, and a sick person had to balance their fluid ratios by drinking herbal remedies. Historically, they would assign certain medicinal herbs to these bodily fluids. A medicinal herb called hyssop was used in the Middle Ages to help reduce excess mucus and was harvested and preserved during the fall season. In addition to treating minor heart problems, bronchitis, sore throats, and coughing, it was also used for treating other minor ailments. Other medicinally important herbs like licorice, coriander, and lavender were also preserved and harvested to help cure other illnesses during the long winter months. One of the main problems in winter was the issue of boredom. However, people at different economic levels found ways to combat this issue. They enjoyed the pleasures of modern times as well, like playing in the snow, skating, and sledding, and they even had various games. Boar hunting, a pastime of the nobility which served 2 purposes, sport and food, is one of many winter activities enjoyed by the upper class. In medieval times, there were 40 days of fasting before Christmas called Advent, meaning the second coming. The fasting period started on November 11, also known as St. Martin's Day, and ended on Christmas Eve. Affluent lords used Christmas as a time to reward their farm laborers by providing 12 days off from work. The 12 days of downtime were filled with fun festivities, such as attending church service on Christmas morning, exchanging gifts, singing, dancing, eating, drinking wine or beer, and hosting Christmas parades. They basically had a great time. Christmas was celebrated lavishly by the rich in the community, and peasants were also invited. But most of the poor citizens lived on what they had and still enjoyed Christmas.